So a cardboard box split open at a service gate at Windsor Castle, and about 40 invitations slid out onto the tarmac in front of 2 security officers who were not supposed to be looking at them at all. Cream card, raised lettering, thick gold edging, and sitting above the name Laura Lopes, printed in gold, a royal crown. 24 hours before that box hit the ground, Laura Lopes's office had an email from the palace telling her in writing that no royal insignia was to appear on anything connected to her private art reception. Somebody opened it. The palace server logged that. Nobody replied, and the vans came through the gate anyway, under paperwork describing the cargo as a private family delivery for the Queen. Princess Anne heard about the split box at 12 minutes past 8 the next morning. By 9:30, she had every door in that wing of the castle locked with people still inside it, and the Princess Royal does not lock doors for a party. The guest list ran to 42 names. 41 of them were typed. One of them somebody had added by hand in ink, and by the end of the day, the person who recognized that handwriting had gone very quiet indeed. Quick word before we go further. I'm Harold. I spend my time going through everything that moves around this family, the household filings, the visitor logs, the court records, the stories that got buried before anybody finished asking questions, and what you were about to hear is me putting the pieces together the way I read them. Stay with me all the way to the end of this one, because that handwritten 42nd name is the piece that turns this from a family row into something a lot colder. Now back 36 hours, because the email is where this starts, and it is the reason nobody can claim they misunderstood. It went out at 7 in the morning. Polite, the way these things always are when somebody senior has already decided the answer is no. Laura Lopes had been planning a private art reception, and the palace laid out the terms in 4 flat lines. The event could not take place in the East Terrace rooms at Windsor. No royal insignia on invitations, programs, or signage. No photographers, no commercial sponsors. The last line said the decision was final and asked her office to confirm receipt. Her office opened it. The server logged the read receipt at 7:12. And then silence. Think about how strange that silence is. Every household in that family runs on confirmations. Somebody reads a thing, somebody types back 2 words, and the machine keeps moving. A read receipt with no reply is the household version of hanging up mid-sentence. One aide flagged it that morning and got told to leave it, because family matters have a way of solving themselves. They do not solve themselves. About 24 hours later, 2 delivery vans came up the approach road toward a service entrance on the east side of the castle. Lighting rigs, a champagne wall in sections, floral arrangements tall enough that the men had to angle them through the doors. None of it carried the visitor authorization that every delivery into a working royal residence is meant to carry. The paperwork carried one phrase instead: private family delivery for the Queen. That phrase changed the whole morning. The officer on the gate waved the first van through without opening anything, because the words for the Queen do a particular kind of work inside that building. They land like an instruction from somewhere above the man reading them, and he has about 4 seconds to decide whether he wants to be the one who held up the Queen's flowers. The second van got stopped by pure accident. One of the heavy boxes had shifted on the drive up and the tape had gone at the corner, and when the driver pulled it toward him, the whole side gave way. The invitations went across the tarmac. And there they were. Laura Lopes's name and a royal crown sitting directly above it. The exact symbol the email had banned in writing the previous morning. Somebody photographed the pile before anybody picked it up, and by 8:10 that photograph was moving up the chain towards the Princess Royal. The part I keep coming back to is the money. Gold edging, raised print, heavy stock, 42 of them. That work takes days and it costs real money, and somebody commissioned the print run knowing there was an email sitting in an inbox saying, "Do not do this." That question landed on Anne's desk at 12 minutes past 8, and she found the answer inside 20 minutes. It was worse than a print error. The original design had gone through weeks earlier, and Anne's office had a copy. Plain and harmless. A name, a date, an address. Nothing suggesting the monarchy stood behind the evening. Somebody had gone back into that file after the warning email and added the crown. Anne put the two versions side by side on the table. Same font, same layout, same border. And under Laura's name on the second version, 4 words that were not on the first. By gracious royal permission. No such permission existed. Nobody in that building had signed anything, and nobody had been asked to. And that goes for Anne, the Lord Chamberlain's office, and the King's private secretary. Yet 42 people had those 4 words in their hands, and you need to hear who those people were. Gallery owners, collectors, 2 former government ministers, patrons whose names open doors in London without anybody explaining who they are. Every one of them held what looked like an invitation to a royal event. Anne gave the order at 25 past 8. Stop all of it. Nothing goes up, nothing comes in, the rooms stay empty. That should have been the end of it. It was not even close. Laura Lopes was already inside Windsor Castle. She had come in through a private family access point at 10 to 9, carrying a thick blue folder under her arm, and she had 3 people with her who were not on any approved list for that morning. A senior member of staff caught up with them in a restricted corridor and explained, in the careful voice these people are trained to use, that the reception had been cancelled and he would have to walk them back. She did not argue, and she did not raise her voice. She opened the blue folder, took out a single sheet of paper, held it up so he could read it, and told him she had authority to continue. He read it, and he stepped aside. Hold on to that, because a senior member of staff at Windsor does not step aside for a piece of paper unless it outranks him. Inside 4 minutes, the phones started going. Nobody in the Lord Chamberlain's office recognized the signature at the bottom. Nobody in the private secretary's office had drafted it. The typed line above the signature was short and it was clear enough. Please provide Mrs. Lopes with all reasonable assistance. The letterhead came from the Queen's household, not the King's. To you and me, that distinction sounds like paperwork. Inside that castle, it is a lit match in a dry room. Camilla has her own household, her own staff, her own charities, and that has been true since the marriage in April 2005. That machine works. It cannot overrule an instruction issued in the King's name, and it certainly cannot do it inside Windsor, which belongs to the Crown rather than to any person in that family. Sandringham and Balmoral are private property. Windsor is not. A page from the Queen's household telling Windsor staff to assist somebody past a cancellation from the King's side is a flag planted in somebody else's ground. Anne wanted that page in her hand. She said so in one sentence, and she said it twice, which people who work around her will tell you is unusual because she tends to say things once. The page never arrived. Somebody had taken it out of the blue folder before castle security got near a photocopier. The staff member who read it was still in the building and could describe the letterhead, the wording, the position of the signature. 2 assistants had discussed it in a corridor, and the page had gone. That is the moment Anne stopped treating this as a family misunderstanding. She asked for the access logs on all 4 gates, camera footage from the east approach, written statements from everybody who had spoken to Laura Lopes that morning, taken separately and taken at once. Every email in and out of the events office for 6 weeks, and one instruction on top of it, which was that nobody was to telephone the Queen. Camilla knew by 20 past 10. Of course she did. Nothing in that building stays inside a room for more than an hour, and somebody on that corridor made a call within minutes of the doors being sealed. By 10:30, Camilla had cleared her private diary for the morning, and a car was moving toward Windsor. Word came ahead of her that she wanted a family conversation. Anne sent one sentence back down the line, and it reached Camilla's car before the car reached the gates. This is not a family matter. She came through the door angry, and sources suggest the reception had nothing to do with it. Her anger was about how her daughter had been spoken to in a corridor. "My daughter is not a criminal," she said, before she had properly sat down. Anne's answer came back flat. "Then she will have no difficulty explaining the missing page." Camilla held her ground. "There was no page," she said. "No document, no hidden authority, and the staff had misread ordinary correspondence and turned a family courtesy into a security incident." Anne slid a sheet across the table. A signed statement, taken that morning, from a member of staff with more than 20 years in that building. He had read the page and he described the letterhead. 2 assistants had talked about it afterwards. Laura had used it to walk past a checkpoint she had no business walking past, and now nobody could produce it. Camilla read the statement twice. Then she said something that moved this out of the category of household argument altogether. "Perhaps your staff," she said. "Your staff." She chose that word over palace staff, and she chose it over the king's staff, and she said it slowly enough that everybody heard her choose it. Anne caught it. She has spent her whole working life inside the language of that institution, and she knows what the word "your" is doing in that sentence. She leaned forward and said, "These people serve the crown." Camilla looked straight back at her and said 3 words. "For now, yes." The temperature in that room dropped through the floor. That answer had nothing to do with a painting or a champagne wall or 42 invitations. It was about the next reign, and about who will still be holding a key when this one ends. Everybody at that table understood it. Nobody said it out loud. Now, a word about why Anne of all of them was the one standing in that room with the doors locked. Anne does not do drama. Anne does the work. The court circular totals for 2025 put the king at 532 engagements and Anne at 478 at 75 years old. She went back to work after the accident at Gatcombe Park in June 2024 that put her in hospital for 5 nights with a head injury, and she has never given one interview about it. She also refused titles for her own children. Zara and Peter grew up without HRH in front of their names, at a time when everybody around her was doing the opposite. A woman with that history reads a crown printed on a private invitation as somebody helping themselves to the exact thing she kept her own children away from on purpose. Decoration to everybody else. Theft of a kind to her. One more thing sits under this, and it comes back later. Anne was there on the 6th of September 1997. And she watched a 15-year-old boy walk behind his mother's coffin in a dark suit in front of a crowd that had come to blame the family he belonged to. Whatever Anne thinks about how they handled Diana, and she has never once said she has spent nearly 30 years standing between those 2 boys and anybody who wanted something from the name they carry. Back to the room. Anne pulled the guest list toward her while Camilla was still talking and started reading names. Collectors, gallery people, patrons, 2 ministers who left office years ago and never stopped being useful, and then one that stopped her hand. A property lawyer. Everybody else on that list belonged at an art evening. This man handles one specific kind of work for a very small number of families in this country, and pictures on walls are the least of it. Anne circled the name in red and asked for a background check on the firm, and the answer came back inside 20 minutes. Trusts, charitable foundations, transfers of high-value collections between family entities, sales. The pictures on that wall mattered more than the people invited to look at them. She went down to the East Terrace room herself. Staff were already taking the display walls apart, and Laura Lopes stood near the fireplace talking quietly to the event organizer. Behind her, on a long table, 12 framed works. 2 of them worth more than most houses in this country, and none of them on the official event list, which is its own problem because anything that comes through a gate at Windsor is supposed to exist on a piece of paper before it exists in a room. Anne went down the line reading the labels. 11 of them named a lender. The sort of people who put a picture in a family show as a favor and expect their name spelled correctly underneath it. The 12th label had no lender's name on it at all. 3 words instead. Private Royal Collection. That label had no business being there, and this is the hinge the whole story turns on. The Royal Collection belongs to nobody personally. The monarch holds it in trust for the nation and passes it on. Nobody in that family owns a canaletta the way you own a kettle. Items move under written authority, they get logged out and logged back in. They travel with a conservator and an insurance schedule. You do not borrow one for a drinks evening because your mother mentioned it once. This picture had no movement authority at all. No conservator had signed it out and no transport had been booked. It sat on a table in a room it had never been cleared to enter. Anne asked the obvious question. She wanted to know the route that picture took into the castle. Laura said she did not know. She said the picture had arrived with the rest of the delivery and she had assumed it came from the family. The organizer said it had arrived among the official deliveries for the Queen, packed in with the floral crates, and the Queen's household said they had sent no picture. 3 answers, 3 different people, none of them fitting the other 2. Anne walked round the back of the frame, and that is where she found the thing that ended the polite half of the morning. A small paper tag tied to the wire on the reverse. No accession number, no collection reference, none of the markings that hang off an object living inside an institution. A valuation tag. Somebody had not been arranging to show that painting for one evening. Somebody had been finding out what it was worth. That was the point where Anne stopped asking questions and started giving orders. She did not raise her voice, and people who have worked with her will tell you that is the worst version of it. Every door on that floor locked. No phones, no papers into bins, nothing touched until somebody could tell her who owned the picture on that table. Laura looked at her and said, "You cannot keep people here at a family event." Anne looked round the room at the half-dismantled walls and the champagne crates and the 12 pictures, and she said this stopped being a family event the moment somebody put a crown on the invitation. And then Laura Lopes played the only card she had left. She said the painting was no longer in the royal collection. She said it had been given, privately, years ago, to her mother, a gift. Anne asked who gave it. Laura paused, and the pause answered before she did. The king. Everything in that room rearranged itself around those 2 words. If Charles had given that picture to his wife, the label was correct and the Princess Royal had locked 20 people in a room over a gift between a husband and a wife. If he had not, somebody had used the king's name to move a national asset onto a table with a valuation tag hanging off the back of it. One person could settle it, and he was 20 minutes away. Camilla did not want him in the room, and she said so more than once. The king had enough on. She reminded Anne of February 2024, when Buckingham Palace announced his cancer diagnosis, and she said her husband did not need a morning like this one on top of it. She called the picture a small thing, and she told Anne she was turning an afternoon of family courtesy into a constitutional incident because it suited her to. I owe you one piece of honesty at this point. Nobody has published a word of what was said in that room, and nobody involved has confirmed a line of it. The paperwork that came out of the day says plenty, and the rest of this is me reading the shape of what people did afterwards. Anne sent the message anyway. Secure line, direct to the King's private office, 3 lines, come now. Then something odd happened, and the staff still in that room describe it the same way. Camilla went quiet. She stopped arguing mid-sentence and looked at her daughter. Laura turned her head, slowly toward the blue folder on the table. The same blue folder that had held a page nobody could find anymore. Anne saw the look pass between them. She did not ask permission, and she did not ask a question. She crossed the room, picked the folder up by its spine, and tipped everything in it out across the polished table. Guest biographies, catering invoices, a seating plan, insurance schedules for the 11 Lent pictures, still no authorization page. And then, out of a slit in the inner lining, a folded document came loose and landed face up. Thick paper, margins, numbered sections, the tidy look of something a professional had been paid to produce. The staff member in the corridor had held one page that morning. This ran to 15. Across the top, in bold, "The Queen's Family Cultural Initiative." Read that title again, because the word doing the damage in it is initiative. An initiative is not one evening, and one evening does not need numbered sections and a 15-page draft. The document on that table laid out a recurring program of private cultural events, hosted at royal residences, built around Camilla's family, funded by selected corporate sponsors and named patrons. A calendar, a 2-year horizon, a section on brand guidelines. And Laura's Windsor reception was listed in it, in writing, as the official launch. The launch that Windsor security had spent the morning treating as a daughter's art party. The launch the palace had ordered stopped in writing 24 hours earlier, and that went ahead anyway, with vans coming through a service gate under the Queen's name. Now Anne understood the little gold crown, and I want you to understand it the same way she did. That crown was branding. Somebody had been building an unofficial royal operation alongside the official one. Same visual language, same rooms, same weight when the invitation lands on a hall table in Belgravia, and none of the people whose job is to say no. A second door into the monarchy, cut quietly into a wall with its own key holders. And once that thing exists, you cannot shut it down. That is the part that changed Anne's face. Get 42 patrons invested in a program with a crown on the letterhead. Run it for 18 months, put it in 3 glossy magazine spreads. And the next king is being asked to cancel something half of London already treats as royal. He would look like a man shutting his stepmother's family out of the arts, and nobody wins that argument in public. Kill it on day 1 and it cost you a morning. Kill it in year 2 and it cost you a decade. If you were with me on the last one, the video about Anne and Camilla ending up on opposite sides of the same doorway, you will remember what I said. The fights inside that family never happen over titles. They happen over access. This is that again in gold ink. The king arrived a little after midday with no announcement and no photographers, carrying a battered red dispatch box under his arm. He looked at the table first, the papers, the emptied folder, the 15-page draft with its bold heading. Then he looked at the wall where somebody had leaned the 12th picture while they waited for him. His face changed. He knew that painting the way you know a thing that has hung in a room you walked through 10,000 times. Anne asked him one question, in front of everybody, which was a decision in itself. She asked whether he had given that picture to his wife. Charles said one word. No. Laura's head came round toward her mother so fast that 2 people described the movement afterwards without being asked. Camilla said nothing. Her jaw set, her hands stayed flat on the table, and she looked at a point on the wall a foot above her husband's shoulder. Charles asked to see the tag on the back of the frame. He read it, turned it over, and asked who had moved the picture out of its room. Nobody answered him. Then he opened the red box. Inside it, near the top, sat a signed and confidential instruction dated 3 weeks earlier. Those close to the situation say the king had put that painting, along with several other items, into a family trust. Quiet legal work, done properly, signed and witnessed. The beneficiaries of that trust were 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. And there it is. Everything since 7 o'clock the previous morning had a shape. The property lawyer on the guest list, the valuation tag on the frame, the urgency of an event that had to happen this month in these rooms, with these 42 witnesses, and that could not move by a fortnight even after the palace put a written stop on it. Those trust documents were signed, and the schedule of assets was still moving between offices. The gap between signature and completion is the only window that exists. Now think about what a photograph does inside that window. Put the picture on a wall at Windsor for one evening, under a label that says nothing about the royal collection, with the Queen's family hosting and 42 significant people in front of it holding a glass. Somebody takes a picture. A gallery owner mentions in passing that the Queen showed him her landscape. None of that transfers ownership, and none of it stands up in a room with lawyers in it. It creates doubt, and doubt is the whole game. Doubt gives a solicitor something to write a letter about. One letter becomes a query becomes a hold on the schedule, and 3 children's trust sits frozen for 4 years while people paid by the hour argue about what a label meant. Diana's grandchildren, in a queue behind a filing cabinet, over a picture nobody had asked them about. Anne turned to Laura and asked her whether she knew. Laura said she had been told the artwork belonged to her mother, and she said it in the particular way people say things they have been repeating to themselves all morning. Anne asked who told her. Laura looked at the table and did not answer. Charles did not need her to. He turned slowly and looked at his wife. Camilla, to her credit, did not fold. She denied any secret to transfer of anything. Her husband had promised her that picture years ago, in private, with no lawyers in the room. The way people in long marriages promise each other things, and she had never treated it as a transaction because it had never been one. Charles looked at her the way a man looks at somebody when he is trying to remember a conversation that has stopped being a memory and turned into evidence. Then Camilla reached into her bag. She took out a piece of paper, folded soft along the creases, yellowed the way paper goes after a decade in a drawer, and put it on the table in front of him. A birthday note. His handwriting, that upright, slanted hand everybody in this country has seen on reproduced documents. Warm, ordinary, a few lines about a day they had spent somewhere. And at the bottom, one sentence. One day the little landscape will be yours. There it sat. A promise, in writing, in the king's own hand. And now everybody in that room was arguing about a completely different thing. Camilla said it meant what it said. Laura said the matter had been settled years ago and she had acted on that in good faith. Charles said he had written it the way you write things to somebody you love, and that a line at the bottom of a birthday note transfers nothing. Anne saw the danger first. A warm line from a husband to a wife was being used to lift an asset out of a trust set up for 3 children, and if that argument ever reached a court, the family would spend years in public arguing over what a man meant when he wrote something kind on a birthday. Charles took the note out of Camilla's hand and set it beside the trust instruction from the red box. 2 pieces of paper, both his. One written with affection and no lawyer. One written with a lawyer and no affection at all. Then he ended it. He sent for the property lawyer, the man whose name Anne had circled in red an hour earlier, and asked him to say out loud in front of the room which piece of paper governed. The lawyer read both, took his time about it, and gave the flattest answer available. The birthday note showed intention and affection, and it showed that at some point the king had thought about giving her the picture. It transferred nothing. Nobody completed a gift, nobody delivered the item, nobody recorded anything, and the picture stayed in place, insured and catalogued, every year since. The signed and witnessed trust instruction governed. The painting belonged in the trust, and no event had standing to show it as the Queen's property. Camilla did not look at anybody when he finished. Anne was not finished either. A picture on a table is one problem. A false line of authority inside a royal residence is a different problem, and Anne had not forgotten for a minute that somewhere in that building sat a page that let a woman with no clearance walk past a senior member of staff after a cancellation issued in the king's name. She wanted it. She said so to her brother directly, and he backed her without a pause, which is the first decision Charles made all day that anybody in that room respected. The search ran a little over 3 hours. Palace staff went through every office in that wing, pulled the print queue logs off 4 machines, and restored deleted items from 2 mail accounts. Somebody sat with the paper stock records and worked out which tray the sheet had come from. At 46 minutes past 2 in the afternoon, a very frightened junior aide came back with the answer. The page had been printed and sent from the Queen's private office. Camilla had not signed it. Laura had not signed it. The signature at the bottom belonged to one of Camilla's own senior advisors, a woman who had worked for her for a long time and who was, at that moment, sitting in an office 2 floors down, doing her ordinary Tuesday. Anne had her brought up immediately, and the woman who walked in did not behave the way you would expect. No notes, no request for somebody to sit with her, no 20 minutes spent hunting for a version of the morning where none of it was hers. She told them she had drafted the proposal. She wrote the 15 pages, built the calendar, approached 2 sponsors herself. She approved the redesign of the invitations with the crown on them after the palace email came in. She told the delivery firm to put the Queen's designation on the paperwork so the vans would clear the gate. And she typed and signed the page Laura Lopes held up in a corridor at 10 to 9. Then she explained why, and her explanation put Camilla's face in her hands. Insiders say her answer was one word. She had done it to protect the Queen. That was her word. Protect. She had watched the Prince of Wales's household draw a line over the last 2 years, slowly and politely, and she had watched Camilla's family end up on the wrong side of it an inch at a time. Fewer invitations to the things that matter. A seating plan that puts you 6 places further from the middle than last year, and nobody ever tells you why, because nobody ever has to. She said she looked at the day the reign changes hands and saw a woman in her 80s in a house in Wiltshire with 2 adult children who have no titles, no roles, and no way back in once the doors close. Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes hold no titles, and they never have. That part is real, and it is not an accident, and Camilla has said more than once over the years that she wanted her children left out of it. Her advisor had decided that being left out of it was fine while Charles was on the throne, and fatal the moment he was not. Her answer to that was a machine. Sponsors, patrons, a program, a crown on the letterhead. Money never came into it, she said, and everybody in the room believed her. She wanted position, a permanent self-funding place for that family inside the country's cultural life. Built before William became king, and impossible to remove afterwards without a public row nobody would want. She thought she was defending her queen. And in the course of defending her, she used the Queen's daughter as the front door. That is the part I keep turning over. Laura Lopes is the one whose name sat under that crown. Her name went on the invitations, her folder held the page, and she was the one in that corridor at 10 to 9 telling a senior member of staff that she had authority to continue. Somebody told her the event was approved. Somebody handed her a document signed by a person she had every reason to trust. Somebody assured her, more than once, that the painting was her mother's property. And when that cancellation email arrived at 7 in the morning, she made the one choice that turned her from a victim into a participant. She ignored it. She never rang the palace to check. She never rang her mother, or the King's office, or any of the 4 people in London who could have told her the truth in a 90-second phone call. She read an email that contradicted everything she wanted to be true, and she carried on with the morning that felt better. Anne has never once in 50 years cared who anybody's mother is, and Camilla's daughter was safe from her on that count all day. Her anger came from somewhere else. That name had got vans past a gate, moved a national asset into a room with no clearance, pushed a member of staff out of the way against his training, and turned a private wish into something that looked like an instruction from the crown. The king ended it in about 4 minutes. He dismissed the advisor on the spot, with the private secretary standing there and a note taken. He had the invitations destroyed, all 42 of them. He ordered the painting logged, condition checked, and walked back to a secure store that afternoon by somebody from the royal collection. And then he made it worse, which is a thing Charles has been doing at exactly these moments for most of his adult life. Laura Lopes left Windsor by the family entrance a little after 3. 2 members of staff walked with her the whole way, one in front and one behind, which is what they do when somebody's access has been withdrawn rather than expired. A groundsman stopped work and stood holding a rake, watching. A girl from the catering agency who had been there since 7 stood in a doorway with a tray of glasses she never got to put out. Nobody spoke to her. Somebody on the gate wrote her registration in a book. Camilla watched that from a first-floor window, and when she came back down the stairs, she wanted an apology. The cancelled reception had nothing to do with it. She wanted one for the corridor, for the questioning, for the 2 men walking her daughter to a car in front of the staff. Anne refused in about 11 words, and she softened none of them. Charles tried to fix it, and his attempt to fix it was the spark. He said something about everybody being tired and about family, and about how none of this needed to leave the room, and Camilla turned on him and then turned on his sister. She told Anne she had humiliated her family in front of the household to make a point about who is going to be in charge. She said the Princess Royal had spent the day performing authority for a nephew who is not king yet, and that the picture was an excuse. Anne let her finish. Then she said the thing that emptied the room. She said she was protecting the throne, and that William had nothing to do with it, and that the only reason any of this had been possible was that her brother had spent 20 years refusing to say out loud where affection ends and authority begins. Nobody spoke after that. Charles closed his eyes. And underneath all the shouting, she was right, and I think that is the hardest thing in this whole story. Charles has spent a very long time trying to knit 2 families into one. He wanted his wife's children treated warmly, he wanted his own sons to accept them, and he wanted Christmas to work. Those instincts are decent ones. He never once drew the line. He never sat anybody down and said in plain words that warmth is not access, that a birthday note is not a deed, that a family courtesy has no crown on it. He left it comfortable and vague is an invitation to anybody prepared to read it generously. He did the same thing 30 years ago, and the whole country watched how that one ended. The vagueness about who counted, the questions nobody would answer out loud, Diana's 2 boys walking behind her coffin on the 6th of September, 1997. William learned young what an unsaid rule costs, and Anne watched him learn it. One soft sentence at the bottom of a birthday card nearly pulled 3 children into a dispute over property. One advisor filled a silence with a 15-page plan. One daughter walked past a checkpoint because she had been allowed to believe that family access outranked palace rules, and honestly, who taught her that? The story got out 4 days later, and it got out the way these things always do, sideways and small. A photograph appeared first. The delivery van at the service gate, taken on a phone from the public road by somebody who thought the floral crates looked interesting. A diary column ran 3 lines about a cancelled reception at Windsor. Then a Sunday paper carried a fuller version, careful and unsourced, built around the phrase "an event that never took place," and by midweek a headline had put the words "the Queen's family next to Windsor" in a way nobody in that building wanted to see. The palace said nothing. No statement, no denial, no briefing. 2 of the 42 guests told friends about an invitation followed by silence, and that is how the 4 words got out. For about 10 days, people online argued over whether "by gracious royal permission" had ever been a real phrase. Somebody made it up. That is the answer. And now you know it before they do. The last piece of this landed after Laura Lopes had gone. Anne picked the guest list back up. She had circled the property lawyer's name in red that morning and had not looked at the rest of the page since. 42 names. 41 of them typed by the same printer that produced the invitations, in the same font, in one clean run. One of them written by hand, in ink, in the margin at the bottom, added after the list had been printed. Anne looked at the handwriting for a long time. Laura had not written it, and Camilla had not written it either, and Anne has seen enough of both over the years to be sure of that inside a second. The advisor had spent the whole afternoon admitting everything else she had done, and a woman who has already lost her job has no reason left in the world to lie about a name. Charles came over to see what she was looking at, and he recognized the hand immediately because it was his own. He had written that name weeks earlier, before the cancellation email, before somebody put a crown on the invitations, before the vans, before the valuation tag, before his wife told his sister that the staff of Windsor Castle served the crown for now. The 42nd name was the property lawyer. The king had known about the initiative from the beginning. He had seen an early version. He had thought it sounded rather good. He had suggested his wife take proper advice on the ownership question, and he had written the man's name on the list himself so somebody would remember to invite him. Then the thing grew teeth. Sponsors came in, the crown went on the paper, his own private secretary started asking questions, and Charles stepped back. He let his household shut it down for him. He let his wife's staff carry the weight of it, and he sat in that room and watched a woman lose her career for building what he had encouraged. He never told anybody to move that painting. He has told the truth about that all day. He also never told anybody not to. Camilla sat there understanding that her husband had let her stand in the fire alone. Laura had spent the morning believing the palace was behind her, because in the beginning, quietly, part of it had been. Anne had spent the day defending an institution from a plan its own head had helped start. All three had been reacting to the same empty space, and the man who was supposed to fill it had been in the room the whole time. Anne did not shout. Anne has never shouted at anybody in her life who was not on a horse. She picked up the guest list, walked round the table, and set it down in front of her brother, face up, with the handwritten name at the bottom, pointing toward him. "You could have stopped this on the first day," she said. Charles did not defend himself. He did not deny it. He did not explain. And for once he did not find a version of events where he was busy elsewhere. He looked at the pale rectangle on the wall where the picture had hung for 1 hour that morning. He looked at the bin with the gold invitations in it, torn across twice. Then he reached inside his jacket for a fountain pen, pulled the 15-page proposal toward him, and drew one heavy black line through the words, "The Queen's Family Cultural Initiative." Underneath it, he wrote a new rule, in that same upright hand, the one from the birthday note. No private family member acts with royal authority. Then he signed it and dated it, and he pushed it into the middle of the table where his wife could read it. Laura's name is not written anywhere on that page. Every person in the room knew who it was for. 3 children own that painting now, and not one of them has ever seen it. Their grandmother has been dead for 29 years, and the thing Diana spent her last years frightened of was exactly this: a house full of adults deciding things about her sons and her sons' children in rooms nobody was allowed into. Anne could not stop that in 1997. She stopped this one before 3 o'clock. Anne gathered her papers, put the guest list on top of the pile, and walked to the doors without saying goodbye to anybody. Behind her, Charles sat alone at a long table with a birthday note that promised too much, a security order that arrived too late, and a torn gold invitation that should never have existed. The king was surrounded by his own signatures, sitting in the wreckage of the one sentence he never said out loud. And Camilla went home that evening, carrying the only thing she had brought in with her, which was a lie somebody else told on her behalf. She had spent the day defending the version of her daughter that never checked, the version of her advisor that never asked, and the version of her marriage where a line on a birthday card outranks a signed instruction from the king. All 3 died on that table between midday and 3 o'clock, and she is the one who has to live in the house with what is left. Now the question, because I have been going round this one for a week, and I keep landing in 2 different places. Did Anne shut down a real attempt to hijack the authority of the crown before it grew into something no future king could kill without a public war? Or did she use one badly handled art evening to lock Camilla's children out of the palace for good, and hand her nephew a clean house before he needs it? Tell me which one in the comments, and be honest with me, because I have read that guest list about 40 times, and I still cannot decide whether the man who wrote the 42nd name was careless or clever. Next time, the part nobody has touched. 3 weeks before any of this, somebody moved 4 items out of a room at Windsor and logged them under the wrong reference, and one of those 4 has not come back. I have the reference number.